Hello everyone, welcome to R.K Medicos. In this section we are going to discuss about biochemistry here and the part 4 biochemistry. We discuss here in the general biochemistry basically in this section. In general biochemistry we are discussing now what are the main components on which, what are the pillars on which the biochemistry stand and what are the main hormonal regulation. In this topic basically we are going to discuss about the hormonal regulation. What are the hormones that regulating the functions of several metabolic pathways? What are the metabolic pathways is concerned with biochemistry, and what are their hormonal regulation? What are the hormones that regulating to them? We are discussing in this section basically in the fourth number section of the biochemistry. First, what is the heading of topic? We can see here part 4, concept of hormonal regulation. What is the main concept of the hormonal regulation? Is it how the hormone gets controlled in our metabolic action or the metabolic pathway? They controlling the metabolic pathway by basically the two important hormonal regulations. We can see the hormonal regulations is first one. This one is hormonal regulation is done in two ways. In any person in well-fed state, the person is eating fully and the body is full of glucose, and the second one is the fasting state. The patient is in fasting state, and in person is any person is having in fasting state. What does it mean? There is a low blood glucose level. It means the body is having glucose is very lower amount. It means we want more glucose. The body wants more glucose for the consumption. It means which hormone is responsible for the increase in the number of amount of glucose in our bloods? The glucagon is responsible for it. In a starvation, the glucagon is responsible for the increase the amount of glucose in our blood. And we discuss in the third part of our biochemistry everything about the glucagon and insulin, how the action is performed in them. Now we are going to discuss about the what are the hormonal regulation and the different types of metabolic pathways. Suppose that the glycolysis is what happened in glycolysis, in gluconeogenesis, in glycogenolysis, everything. We see which hormone is regulating them in fasting state, which in fasting or in the well-fed state. So here we are basically discussing the hormonal regulation is based on well-fed state. In well-fed, the body is full of glucose, the blood is having high amount of glucose is present. Then which hormone is regulating it? The insulin is regulating the higher blood glucose level. They are responsible for the entering of this glucose inside the cells. That's why the insulin is responsible for them. In well-fed state, which hormone is regulated these activities? Insulin. And in fasting state, glucagon. And the both regulate the enzyme activity by acting on the well-fed and in fasting state. Next step we can say the regulation of enzyme activity by a special term, and it is the most important term here. That one is called as covalent modification. It is the modification of our enzyme activities in the covalent bond forming activities. This covalent modification is done by the two ways, basically the phosphorylation and dephosphorylation, and we know the phosphorylation and dephosphorylation is performed by the insulin and glucagon. Which activity is performed by the insulin? The insulin is performing dephosphorylation. We can see here the insulin, this insulin is showing activity in which state? Well-fed state or fasting state? Of course in the well-fed state. When the person is full of energy, the person is having more amount of glucose in his blood. The insulin is the hormone which is the hormone of well-fed state. This hormone is also called as well-fed state because it is secreted in our body inside what time? At the well-fed time. And this insulin is generally dephosphorylate, means phosphorylation or dephosphorylation. The dephosphorylation will be occur. It means the removal of phosphate group or attachment of phosphate group. The transfer of phosphate group is called as kinase enzyme activity. We discussed previously. The dephosphorylation is regulating the enzymes and metabolic pathway. The different types of metabolic pathway is regulating by them. What are the metabolic pathway? What are the name of this metabolic pathway? We discuss later. But for now we have to understand that this metabolic pathway it gets dephosphorylated state. When they are in well-fed state, the insulin is causes what? Dephosphorylation. This point is golden point in our biochemistry, in general biochemistry basically. The insulin is doing dephosphorylation of the metabolic pathway. or the dephosphorylation of the enzymes of the metabolic pathway. In the next step we can see the enzymes under the influence of insulin is active in dephosphorylated state. All the enzymes which are present in the different types of metabolic pathway, all the enzymes what are the present in the different types of metabolic pathway, they are gets activated in the dephosphorylation state. It means which enzyme is regulating their activity? That is insulin. The insulin is regulating the activity of the dephosphorylating enzymes in the metabolic pathway basically. In next point we can see same glucagon. Glucagon is the enzyme of fasting state. They increasing the blood glucose level. Basically in fasting the blood glucose level will be down. So we have to increase it. That's why the body increasing the amount of glucagon inside the body, and the glucagon is the hormone of what? Fasting state. When they get secreted, we discuss in first part of our diagnostic, the fasting state is after 4 hours is starting, that is beginning at the early fasting state when the blood glucose level is less than 50 milligram per dl. And what happened? The glucagon is secreted. After that, they are generally causes phosphorylation. They generally phosphorylates the enzyme, and after that, and they regulating the phosphorylatory enzymes, and they are called as phosphorylated state. So what are the enzymes in our metabolic pathway are gets in the which state? Fasting or well fed? In the well fed or fasting basically. They are the fasting state. In the fasting state the glucagon is secreted and they phosphorylate the enzymes. And what are the enzymes are active form in the metabolic pathway? They are the phosphorylated enzymes. When the enzymes is phosphorylated? When the glucagon is secreted. And when the dephosphorylated, when the insulin is secreted. In which pathway? The different names is given in the different pathways. Basically we can see here in the metabolic pathway, all the metabolic pathway. What is metabolic pathway? All the pathway where the energy is catabolized and anabolism and catabolism is happened, and their active states. We can see there are three main factors we are going to see here. Three main factors on which we are going to decide how the enzymes get activated them, how the enzymes get regulated them, insulin or glucagon, well fed or fasting state. The any patient, suppose that the any patient is well fed state or fasting state. Well fed state which enzyme? Well fed state insulin, and in fasting state glucagon. Again well fed state insulin and fasting state glucagon. Well fed state insulin, phosphorylation or dephosphorylation? They done dephosphorylation. In fasting state they are done by glucagon, and glucagon is done phosphorylation. So these are the sequence. We have to memorize it in this way. We can see these three are along and these three are along. These three are well-fed state insulin and dephosphorylation is done by the three factors in the metabolic pathway, and the fasting glucagon and phosphorylation is the another pathway. These are the three sequence. Next one we can see here. Sorry. Next point we can see there is a pathways. Here are the pathways we can see. These are the pathway. These are the well fed or fasting state. There is insulin or glucagon is used enzyme. There is a phosphorylation or dephosphorylation of enzyme is happened. We can see in this state. Suppose that the metabolic pathway is glycolysis. What happened in glycolysis? The glucose is break down into the two simpler complexes of the pyruvate. Suppose that this glucose is breaking down into the different steps, and after that the product is pyruvate. The glycolysis is happened in basically what state? In fasting state or well fed state? Basically the glucose is in our body is present. Basically the body wants to generate energy, then it's happen only in the well fed state. When the person eat in good quantity food, then it's well fed state. Which enzyme is responsible for the well fed state? Insulin. Yes, insulin doing what is it? That is dephosphorylation of enzymes of metabolic pathway. What are the enzymes that are involved in this pathway? Which pathway? Glycolysis. So what are the enzymes that is involved in the glycolysis? All the enzymes, what are they involved in it? They all are gets dephosphorylated during that time. In the next step we can see glycogen synthesis. It means glycogenesis, means glycogen synthesis. Glycogenesis, what is the enzyme for them? One special enzyme for the glycogen synthesis is glycogen synthase. This is important here. For the glycogen formation, the glycogen synthase enzyme is responsible, and the glycogen synthesis is happened when we are going to store our food in the body. First we eat, the body demand is fulfilled. After that, the more food is present in our, more glucose is present in our body. What body is going to do? The body is going to store this energy in the glycogen form, in the liver, in the different parts of adipose tissue, in the muscles region. So this energy gets absorbed in our body basically. In what form? The glycogen form. That's why they are called as glycogen synthesis, and they are also called as glycogenesis. Okay, one enzyme is responsible for them, that is called as glycogen synthase. It is happened in well-fed or fasting. It is happened in basically in well-fed state. Which enzyme is responsible for them? Insulin or glucagon? Of course insulin. Phosphorylation or dephosphorylation, they're doing enzymes of this pathway. They're doing basically dephosphorylation. We can see once again, there is a well-fed state, insulin, and dephosphorylation state. Once again, we can see third one, gluconeogenesis. Gluco means glucose, neo means new, genesis means formation. The new glucose formation. These are the basically formation of glucose from the non-carbohydrate sources. Means these are formed from the amino acids, lactate, or the different types of components except carbohydrate. These are the non-carbohydrate sources, like the amino acids. Basically all the amino acids we can see, these are participate, alanine or the leucine, lysine, methionine. These type of amino acids are used the formation of the glucose from here. Gluconeogenesis. The gluconeogenesis means what? Gluco means glucose, neo means new, genesis means formation, the new glucose formation. So basically in our well-fed state, the glucose is synthesized from the carbohydrate sources, because we eat carbohydrate mainly. And after that, what happened in the formation of gluconeogenesis step is happen in our body? When the gluconeogenesis is happen in our body, when any person gets fasting. Suppose that the person is fasting, means they didn't take food from the more than 5 hours or 6 hours, more than 4 hours basically. The body gets deprived for the glucose. What happened? The body is going to search for the energy in our body. The body in the searching for the energy. They are going to utilize the amino acids, and they forming the glucose basically. This pathway is called as gluconeogenesis, and this is happening in fasting state. So basically early fasting, but we can see here fasting state. Which enzyme is responsible for the fasting? Glucagon. What they are performing? Phosphorylation or dephosphorylation? Of course phosphorylation, or the phosphorylation of the enzymes of this pathway. It is okay. Hope it will be clear. Now the third one, we can see glycogenolysis. Once again, glycogen means glycogen, lysis means breakdown. Glycogenolysis. What are the enzymes that are responsible for the glycogenolysis, the breakdown of glycogen? What does it mean? Basically, suppose that we are now in normal condition, we take food, everything is fine, but in fasting condition, what happened? When the patient didn't eat anything from more than 4 or 5 or 6 years, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 hours, there is a breakdown of the storage form of energy. And what is the storage form of energy in our body? That is glycogen. It is stored in the liver and different parts of our tissues of body. So it will be going to breakdown of these energies, and the glycogen breakdown, that is called as glycogenolysis. It happens in fasting or early state, or the well-fed, in well-fed or fasting. It happens in fasting state basically. In fasting state, it's going to break down in early fasting step. It means which enzyme is responsible for them? Glycogen or insulin? Of course glycogen. And it is doing phosphorylation or dephosphorylation? Of course phosphorylation. Once again, it is clear. Fasting, glucagon, and phosphorylation of these enzymes, and phosphorylated state of these enzymes. What enzyme is responsible for the breakdown of this glycogen? Glycogen phosphorylase. The enzyme here, we can see glycogen phosphorylase. Glycogen phosphorylase, we can see. Glycogen phosphorylase and glycogen synthesis, glycogen synthase. So we have to memorize these things. Next one, we are going to see link reaction. What is the link reaction is here? We can see link reaction is what? Suppose that first of all the glycolysis is happen. Many of you don't know about glycolysis. I hope so. If you are second year student, then you are not going to deal about that. But we are going from the basics. first we are going to take overview of everything. After that we are going to see one by one each and every pathways, each and every cycle, what happened in each and every cycle, what are the enzymes, what are the energy sources, what are the energy currencies of these pathways. But for now we are going to discuss in overview everything. Maybe hope it will be clear for you. Link reaction, it means they are connecting something, they are connecting one cycle to another cycle. It means one cycle is this, one cycle is this, these are both are connecting to each other. That is linking to each other, connecting to each other or linking to each other. It means what happened here, we can see the link reaction PDH means pyruvate dehydrogenase. PDH is basically a pyruvate dehydrogenase. It is the enzyme which is connecting them. Suppose that the glycolysis is connected with Krebs cycle. Then between them there is a connecting link and the pyruvate gets converted into acetyl CoA. And after that the acetyl CoA is linking the Krebs cycles or the citric tricarboxylic acid cycle. They are connecting them. These are the link reaction. It happens when in well-fed state or fasting state. When we are going to produce energy in well-fed state, of course. In well-fed state we are going to produce energy. That's why we are going to see here in well-fed state what enzyme is used, insulin or glucagon. Insulin, which what they are doing with the enzymes, dephosphorylation of the enzymes. Next point we can see the fatty acid synthesis. When we are going to synthesize fatty acids, when we are going to synthesize the fatty acids in our body. In our body we want to access energy. When our body having excess energy, then body is going to store this energy in the forms of fatty acids. They basically forming the adipose tissues or the fatty acids. These are happen when the patient is fasting or well-fed. The body is going to store something. It means they are happen in well-fed state. It not happen in fasting. In fasting we are going to search for the energy, but in the well-fed state we are searching for the. We are not going to searching for the energy in the well-fed state. But what happened when the person is having full of energy, the body is full of energy, there is excess amount of energy is present in our blood and the body is going to store these energies. And that's why they are forming the fatty acid synthesis. They are going to forming the acid synthesis or the fatty acid synthesis or the adipocyte cells. And this leads to which type of enzyme is used in the well-fed state? Insulin. Again there is a dephosphorylation of these enzymes. What are the enzymes which is responsible for the fatty acid synthesis? These all are the enzymes gets dephosphorylated and in their active state. Next we can see cholesterol synthesis. When in our body cholesterol is gets synthesizes, when the cholesterol is gets synthesizes, it also happen in the well-fed state. We are going to see everything in detail. For now it's happen in well-fed state also, and they are enzyme is insulin, and what they are doing, dephosphorylation of these enzymes. And we can see what are the main enzyme of fatty acid synthesis. We can see acetyl CoA carboxylase here and cholesterol synthesis HMG CoA reductase here. So these are the two enzymes responsible for the two different metabolic pathway. So this is all about the pathways. We can say we are discussing here about them. What are the sequential arrangement of this pathway? How they are working in, which pathway is working in the well-fed state, which pathway is working in the fasting state, which pathway is controlled by the which hormonal regulation. They may be insulin or they may be glucagon. They may be where the phosphorylation of enzymes or the dephosphorylation of enzymes is happened in these pathways. Basically in upper we are going to see what are the glucagon is released in the fasting or well-fed state. We can see insulin is in well-fed or the glucagon in fasting state. This covalent modification is basically done by the phosphorylation and dephosphorylation of the enzymes, and they are regulated by the insulin and glucagon. This is all about the concept of the topic of hormonal regulation. And in the same the concept of biochemistry we are something left now, that is the metabolic fuels. What are the metabolic fuels? It means the metabolic fuel, it means they are the currency of energy that is utilized by our body parts or the different organs of our body or the organ system what are located in our body. Suppose that in the liver, digestive system, the many parts, or the circulatory system or the brain, these all are the regions of our body, or the heart in the thorax region. They are the require more energy than the different parts of our body. And what are the energy source, what are the metabolic content of them, it is utilized by them. Suppose that the glucose is also the metabolic product. And once again we can see the many different types of energy, that is free fatty acids. We can see glucose, free fatty acids, and sometimes there is a usage of ketone bodies by some different types of organ, or the amino acids in the different cases. So we are going to discuss what are the main organs which are utilizing what type of energy sources and in which state, in fasting state or in the early fasting state or in the well-fed state, what happened to these organs. Suppose that our brain is utilizing in the well-fed state. We are the normal looking person. When we are in the normal state, we eating the very confidently, we are eating in the normal balanced diet. And what happened in the well-fed state to these organs, when the brain is demanding glucose or the different types of energy source, what they utilize is the form of energy in the well-fed state, what they utilize is the energy in the early fasting or the fasting state or in the prolonged starvation or the starvation condition. So we are going to discuss one by one each organs of our body, which organ is responsible for the what type of energy in our body is utilized by that different parts of our body or the different organs of our body. We can see in the metabolic fuel, basically first organ in well-fed state, what happened in well-fed state, what happened in early fasting or the fasting state, or the what happened in starvation condition or the prolonged fasting. Suppose the person is more than 2 to 5 days. We can see the first organ is liver. What happened in the liver? In the liver, in well-fed state, when the person gets full of energy, then glucose is the better source for the liver. The glucose is mainly utilized by the liver. Or glucose or free fatty acid, both are utilized, but mainly what are the most important source of energy for the liver? That is glucose. Glucose is for the each and every organ in our normal condition or in the well-fed state. But basically, what are the differences? What are the also used by these organs? In the well-fed state, the liver is using two main types of energy sources. That is the glucose and free fatty acid. And which one is the more or the mostly used by the liver? That is glucose. Next, we can see in early fasting state or the what happened in the early fasting or in the fasting state, there is used free fatty acid is most of the time they are used by the free fatty acid. In which state? In fasting state, in early fasting state. And in starvation condition used amino acids or free fatty acids. They never use ketone bodies. KB is here, ketone bodies. They never use ketone bodies. The liver is never going to uses as an energy source. They depending on the energy source for the ketone bodies. Never. They are basically using the first in the well-fed state. They are using what? Glucose or free fatty acids. So they are mostly glucose. In the second fasting state, they are going to use what? They are in fasting state, they are going to use free fatty acid mostly and then glucose. And third one, in prolonged state, they are going to use amino acids or the free fatty acids. In second part, we are going to see that is heart. What happened inside the heart? Inside the heart, the main source of energy is free fatty acid basically. And glucose is also used by the heart. Main source of energy of the heart in well-fed state. If the person is normal condition or the good source of energy utilized by the patient, then what are the main source of energy for the heart? Then free fatty acid or what? Glucose or everything. That is free fatty acid and glucose. Both are utilized by them, but mostly glucose. What happened in fasting state? In fasting state, they also prefer what? Free fatty acid. They also prefer the free fatty acid. What happened in a starving condition? In a starving condition, more than 2 to 5 days, their patient is using ketone bodies. Patient hearts is going to depend on what? Ketone bodies. We discuss in the first part of our biochemistry how the ketone bodies is first, and second part how the ketone bodies is formed. And when the ketone bodies is utilized, we going to discuss later how these are formation of the ketone bodies, but we are discussing briefly in first or second part of our biochemistry there. In the second part, in the third organ is brain. In the brain, which one is the major source of energy or the major source of energy is preferred by the glucose for the utilization? That is glucose in well-fed state. In early fasting, glucose once again. In the prolonged state, there are two main parts we can see here in the brain. Mainly the source of energy is glucose, only glucose. In well-fed state, glucose. In fasting state, glucose. In prolonged fasting state, glucose. But sometimes they are also used in prolonged fasting or the starving condition only. They only uses 20% of something. They uses 20% of something, and that is ketone bodies. Only 20% in when there is 20% of the ketone bodies in the starving condition only. So basically, what are the source of glucose? What are the source of energy in our brain? The source of energy in our brain is basically the first one is glucose in the well-fed state. The second one we can see First, glucose in well-fed state. Second, in fasting or early fasting state, once again glucose. In prolonged state, glucose and once again 80% of glucose and 20% of ketone bodies. We have to memorize it. It's most important. Next one, what happened to the skeletal muscles? What are the muscles which are stick to our bones? They are skeletal muscles. They are the basically source of energy in well-fed state, glucose. In well-fed state, glucose. And what are the other source of energy also in well-fed state? Free fatty acid. We have to memorize giving the priority to these answers, which one is most correct. So we are writing here. Next one, in early fasting state, free fatty acid is more, same as the liver. And what happened in the last starving condition? There is a free fatty acid also used, and ketone bodies is basically utilized when slow twitch muscle is present. When there is a metabolism is happened in the slow twitch muscles, when the any muscles is having the slow twitch is activated. We discuss in the physiology section what is the slow twitch or the fast twitch, but for now we have to memorize it. There is a slow twitch muscles are utilizes ketone bodies, and otherwise we can use free fatty acids in the prolonged starving conditions. Next one we can see RBC. RBC is depends on glucose in the well-fed state, and in the fasting state glucose, in the prolonged state glucose. Till now we discuss one and only part of our body that is depend upon only glucose, that is RBC. It's only depend upon glucose. Brain also, but in a starving condition the 80% is glucose and 20% that depends upon ketone bodies. Next one, adipocytes. We can see here adipocytes. Adipocytes is basically depend on adipocytes, the cells of adipose tissues. The cells of adipose tissues means skeletal muscles. We can see like this, they are adipose tissues or the fat cells. Basically they utilizes glucose for the energy source. In the well-fed state, in the early fasting or fasting, they use free fatty acids, and after that in the prolonged state or the starving condition, free fatty acid and ketone bodies. So these are the sequence of the utilization of energy by the different parts of our body or the different organs. Of the most important question is the from brain, heart, liver and the RBCs. You have to memorize all of these following charts. It's most important for you to memorize it, because you must to know what is the organ is utilizing what type of energy in their which state of our body. Suppose that in well-fed state, in fasting state, or in the prolonged fasting state, or the starvation condition, or in the well-fed condition, what are the energy sources of these organs. So we have to memorize it. So once again I am going to tell you thank you, all the best from my side, good luck, see you next time in the 5th part of our biochemistry.